welcome back to the Arts District. I'm Lauren.
And I'm Georgia.
And this is our third episode. So to bring you a little bit up to speed, not that we talk about things that go in any particular order, but in episode 2, we talked about... I talked about Devon Cuddy and Lake Street Dive. So if you've never heard of them, you should check out episode 2 for some audio samples and more info about them.
I was talking about ampersands and a book called Just My Type, which is all about fonts. I was also talking about Patty Johnson's 3-part series on the animated GIF and their place in art history, and new online art auctions that are growing.
Yeah. Pretty insightful episode. Yeah. Okay, so episode 3. I'm only going to be talking about one band artist this week, and that's Bahamas. He's putting out a new record August 19th, so by the time we put this episode out, the album will probably already be out. But so I'm going to be talking about that and an article that I read online that's basically about the science of how a song becomes popular and what goes into all that, and it's pretty crazy, so it's going to be interesting.
Nice. I am going to continue my talk about fonts a little bit. I'm also going to talk about a really cool art project that is looking for global participation, and I'm going to talk about an opening that I went to recently.
Cool. What was the opening?
I went to the Orillia Museum of Art and History's Carmichael Canadian Landscape opening.
Carmichael, is that the artist?
No, Franklin Carmichael is a member of the Group of 7.
Okay.
And he was from the Orillia area. He lived here until he was like 20 before moving to Toronto. So every year for about 15 years, the Orillia Museum of Art and History, or OMA, has had a juried landscape exhibition in Carmichael's honor. So I actually helped out a lot in putting the exhibition together. I was managing all of the submissions, but I didn't have anything to do with the jurying process or anything. So it was really cool to see the exhibition come together from about 200 submissions to 35 pieces in the exhibition. So
that was the opening party
night. Yeah.
Was there a good turnout?
There was. Yeah, a lot of the artists came, which was cool because it's Canada wide.
That's really cool.
So yeah, there were artists from out west and lots of people from Toronto and people coming from Montreal and stuff. So it was pretty cool.
That's neat.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's anywhere else that does that kind of thing. If it could be like a touring exhibit.
Ooh, I'd like that.
You know, because that's unfortunate for all the people that are Group of 7 fans. Fans.
Yeah.
That live in like BC or whatever. Or,
right.
Yeah.
Well, the exhibition tries to take like a modern approach to landscape. So in the vein of Carmichael was into experimentation and stuff. So last year for this exhibition, there was a bit of people weren't particularly happy because we included photography in the exhibition as well as some figurative works. So some people are about landscape, and what they mean is like painted landscapes with no people in them. But this exhibition tries to move beyond that. So there's loads of photography and there's lots of stuff that has people in it. Just sort of reimagining what landscape can be, especially modern landscape.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was really great. A couple of artists that I want to mention. The sort of star of the show at the opening was Lisa Burke's Red Carpet piece. And it's a really cool piece. Like, I suggest looking it up because the artist is sort of commenting on landscape but also on popular culture. So she had a red carpet through various landscape scenes, and the red carpet was like directly down the center of the frame.
Neat.
And then she was wearing like a full ball gown and heels and had a little purse and like, hand on the hip, strutting away from the camera along this red carpet. And she made the piece over like 9 months. So there are parts when she's like climbing through waist deep snow to follow this red carpet, and like there are other parts where the red carpet goes across a log and she's following it. So that was a really cool piece, and it was really popular. Like, people were sitting to watch the whole thing.
We should insert a photo of that if we can.
Yeah, totally.
That's really neat. Where's she from?
Oh, I will have to take a look at that. I'll link her website.
Cool.
Yeah, and then I took a lot of photography, so I'm more partial to the photographic works. There were also some more classic painted landscapes, but a few photographers I think you should be on the lookout for, because they were doing some really contemporary landscape stuff. I really liked Morris Lum's piece, Philip Cheung, and Mary Anderson. So you had some really cool photographic stuff, and I think some of them entered more than one piece into the exhibition, and so I got to see a few of the things they were working on, and it's just so cool. It's exciting to see. I don't know, there was those works that I remember when their submissions came in and like getting excited about, like, this is going to be a great exhibition.
That's really cool.
It was cool.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be happy to hear that too.
Yeah, I actually got to talk to a couple of them and like told them that and stuff, and they were pleased, so.
Nice. Yeah. Cool. Do you have anything else to add to that?
I don't think so.
Okay, so the article, I guess I'll talk about that first, that I saw. The title is really dramatic. It was called "The Music Industry is Literally Brainwashing You to Like Bad Pop Songs." And I actually found it. A friend of mine posted it on Facebook, and I was like, what's that about? So I clicked on it and read it. And I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, because whether you like pop music or not, it's out there and you can't avoid it. So the article was put up on a website called Mic.com in their music section. And basically what it is talking about is, this is a quote from the article. It says, "Research suggests that repeated exposure is a much more surefire way of getting the general public to like a song rather than writing one that suits their taste." And I thought that was interesting, because me being a songwriter who actually puts a lot of effort into putting, you know, words on a page that means something to me, and then I hope when others hear it makes a connection, you know, I find that really frustrating and annoying that, you know, these people that are writing the songs for whoever, like Rihanna or that Ariana Grande or whoever's big right now, they're just basically following this strict formula that's gonna grab your attention, you know, right off the bat, and it's gonna build up. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, most of you probably don't know this, there's a lot of like writing companies or whatever, like groups. There's one really big one called The Matrix, and they've basically, I think there's 3 of them in it or 4, and they've basically written all the really big hits in the last like 15 years. And they're just following this formula, and it's not necessarily like the lyrics or anything about it is really moving or emotional or anything like that. It's just the production of it and the formula behind it is what's making it sell. And what this article went on to say was it talks about this thing, it's illegal, it's called payola. It became really popular in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where radio stations, when everything basically was run by the mob, record labels were paying the radio stations to play what they thought were going to be these big hits. And it's illegal, but apparently it still happens, and I guess it's not unavoidable, but these record labels were paying the radio stations knowing that if the consumers or the listeners, whatever, if they heard the song enough times, they would get into their heads and eventually they would like it. Basically saying that if something's repetitive enough, then after a while you become familiar with it, whether you like it or not at that point. When you become familiar with anything, you learn to accept it. And that's how, you know, songs get in our head. And before we know it, songs that when they first came out we hated, before we know it, we're like, no, it's not that bad anymore. Like, something about it gets into you. And, you know, that's happened to me so many times. And one of the songs that they talked about in this article was that new Fancy song by Iggy Azalea. Okay. And I hadn't heard it. And it's been out for a couple months now, but I hadn't heard it. The antenna broke off in my car, so I can't listen to the radio anymore in there. And I don't really listen or watch a lot of TV, so it was just a couple weeks ago one of my friends was singing it, and I was like, what song is that? Like, those lyrics are just silly. And so she's like, what, you've never heard it? And she played it for me. And I was like, okay, I get that people will like this because it's catchy. Like, it's formula catchy. Okay. But there's nothing really in it that, you know, 10 years ago I'll be like, oh yeah, that Iggy Azalea song touched me. Like, there's nothing in it that is, there's no longevity to stuff like that. And yeah, she loved it. And I mean, there's a time and place for music like that. I get it. That's super cool and totally fine. But there was a lot of interesting responses to this article. I read the comment section afterwards. And there were people that were just like, this article is trash. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You talk nothing about demographics, which is true. Like, you know, people in the 50 to 60 age range aren't going to like the same music that 12 to 15-year-olds like. And but I don't think that really matters. Like, I mean, it does. But I don't think that that's what he was talking about. He was just basically generally saying that these songs that are out nowadays that we can all agree on there's no substance to them. They're being planted in our heads, and I think brainwash is too strong of a word and too silly of a word. But yeah, he's just saying that these songs are getting in your head whether you like it or not, and it kind of makes you feel like you have no control over it. We're just a part of this big machine. And one of the people who commented said, you know, you have control over it. You can put not earplugs in, but just turn the radio station off or change it or whatever, like do stuff along those lines. But there are some things that you can't control like that. Like when you're watching TV or TV shows or movies and there's songs playing in the background, like you can't control that. Or if you're out in the shopping mall or wherever and every store is pumping out a song, like that stuff's all been planned out. It's all been thought of, what songs go on those loops. And
yeah, I worked at Claire's for a while in a mall, and they had like CDs that came to the store monthly, and then we were only allowed to play that CD for that month. Right. And then the next CD would come.
Yeah, so like whatever is kind of hip and out at that time. The same for me. I used to work at Sport Check, and we had a loop. It was like I don't even think it was 2 hours worth of music. It was probably like 45 minutes. And I got so sick of those songs. You know, I should have learned to love them. Eventually, I knew all the words and was singing along, but...
Exactly. And you develop, like, a favorite one, even though you're like, I hate all of this.
And then when it comes and goes, you're just like, oh, now I have to wait another hour till I can hear that song again. Yeah, I mean, those were all the points that I really wanted to talk about. I can put a link to that article if anyone's interested in reading it themselves. It's just a short one, but I just thought it was interesting, you know? There's obviously a lot of things out there that we have no control over, but being aware of those things, you know, next time, it gives you something to think about, so, yeah.
I think that's really interesting. It's kind of similar to what I was talking about last week with, you asked me about if there was a reason that certain fonts get more popular than others and why certain fonts are more readable, and I was talking about those studies from the 60s that to say pretty much the same thing. We read more legibly and faster and understand fonts that we see more frequently.
Right.
Which is why stuff like Times New Roman and Helvetica are used so commonly, because they're so readable and clear to us, but it's mostly just because we see those most often that we've adapted to read them so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting.
Kind of similar. Yeah. So, to go along with that, I wanted to talk about a documentary that I first watched back in September. again, to talk about my design nerdiness, I bought this documentary for my birthday, for myself.
Was it a good present to yourself?
It was a great present to myself. I watched it more than once. The documentary is called Helvetica, and that's what it's about. It came out in 2007, and it's by director Gary Hustwit.
Where is it?
Hustwit.
Oh, Hustwit.
Yeah, so it's all about the font, Helvetica, about the history of it. It talks to a lot of font designers and graphic designers who use the font or who don't use the font. Pretty much a documentary about typography, graphic design, and global visual culture, because Helvetica is so widely used. It's just a part of global culture. So, yeah, it's a great documentary and you should watch it.
Okay, so before I go on to talk about Bahamas, I'm going to talk just quickly about some friends of mine who just put out a 5-song EP. The band's called 1951. And yeah, they just recorded, they've been working on it forever, it seems. This EP, they recorded it in Hamilton, Ontario at Catherine North Studios. It's a really neat studio. It's an old church, open concept, really beautiful inside. Yeah, so they've been working on this for a really long time. It'd be great if some of you could check them out, and if you like the songs you hear, buy the album. It's $5 for 5 songs. You can stream it. Go to www.ilove1951.com.
Cool.
You can also follow them on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff. So
nice.
Yeah, just support some up and comers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess I'll talk about Bahamas now. Afi Jervanen. I'm gonna assume his last name's Jervanen. Afi Jervanen is Bahamas. He actually grew up in Barrie, which is like 20 minutes away from where we live. Yeah. And he came out 2009 with his debut album called Pink Strat. In 2012, he released another album called Bar Chords. And actually on August 19th of this year, he's coming out with his 3rd studio album called Bahamas is Afi. So the album's not out right now. You can pre-order it on iTunes, but by the time we air this episode, it'll already be available for you to buy. I've just been streaming it on Exclaim. They've had it up, and Spin put it up today too, I think.
Cool.
It's really good. I listened to Bahamas back when he put out Pink Strat. I remember when it came out, iTunes had hit the song Already Yours. It was an iTunes single of the week. And nice. Yeah, I fell in love with it. He's signed to Jack Johnson's label Brushfire Records, and he totally fits in with that label sound. If anybody is familiar with any of the other artists on Brushfire, they've got like that laid back kind of folky, roots based, just chill out music, and he totally fits right in there. The new album though, he quoted, like this is a quote from him, he said when he was making it, the kind of headspace they were getting into in terms of production, he thought to himself, what would 80s Van Morrison do if he was producing this? Or what about John Williams? So John Williams being the famous composer for movies like, I think he did Harry Potter and
Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones,
Star Wars,
maybe.
All those crazy, really, all the big movies basically. And you can totally hear that there's a lot of like string arrangements in these songs, and I think that's really cool. You know, you can tell that they were experimenting with some of these songs. They still sound very acoustic based and raw, meaning like when I hear it, I can picture in my head the band recording like live off the floor, and it just sounds as if they were, if you were to close your eyes, like they were in the same room as you. Like that's the kind of vibe I get from hearing these songs on this record. Two that I really liked, there's a song called Bitter Memories, and when I was listening to it, I was like, this song reminds me of something or someone or something I've heard before, and I couldn't figure it out until like partway through the song. I was like, Joel Plaskett. It's his voice in certain times it reminds me of Joel Plaskett, and Bitter Memories, there's something about the production that kind of reminds me of some of the songs off of Joel's 3 albums. And I thought that was cool because I love Joel Plaskett. If you could see my room right now, I have a Joel Plaskett poster right there with ticket stubs and, all that. The other song that I thought was cool was one called Stronger Than That. I was working on my computer at the time and I was kind of zoning out, but I tuned in during this song and caught some of the lyrics, and I thought that they were really interesting, like relatable. Actually, that goes to say for a lot of the songs on the CD, I thought they were very relatable, and that's what I look for when I'm listening to new music. I like paying attention to the lyrics and thinking about what they thought of when they wrote it, and just connecting sort of. So he's actually starting a tour on August 19th when he puts the day of the record release. He's starting out at Amoeba Music in Hollywood. Really cool record store. I've actually gotten to go there twice now. I don't really know where they would do the record, like where they would do the concerts in there, because it's a really jam-packed store, but that's where he's starting it out. And he's got a lot of American dates, and then he's swinging through Toronto, Danforth Music Hall, November 5th. So if you can make to that show, you probably wouldn't regret it. And it's nice that you're supporting somebody who's local and that's actually doing really well for themselves right now. Following some more tour dates, he's then going on into Europe. So that's great. Great for Aphie. I actually had the privilege of recording his set last year at Mariposa.
Oh, yeah.
Mariposa Folk Festival. I was on the audio doc team, so one of his workshops, I got to sit there and just record the audio for it. And it was really cool. He seems like a really neat guy. You can check out his website, bahamasmusic.net. You can stream music and check out the tour dates if you want to go see a show. And so that's Bahamas. And we will play a clip of one of the songs. I haven't decided which song yet. Maybe I'll do one of the ones that I really like. And yeah, hope you like it.
And I know you're afraid of falling flat. And I know those walls are up against your back. And I know there are those who'd see a crack. But I know that you're stronger than that.
Yeah.
So, I should mention that through editing episode 2, I've heard Lake Street Dive and Dev and Cuddy a lot because I've been editing episode 2 together, and Lake Street Dive is just like stuck in my brain in a good way, not in a brainwashy way.
Yeah, they're a good band to have stuck in your head.
Yeah, I've just been like over and over. It's great.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next, I want to talk about The Man with the Movie Camera, the global remake. So a little bit of background. Man with a Movie Camera was a Russian documentary film, experimental film from 1929 by a director called Vertov. So I've seen the film. It's a little bit hard to watch nowadays, but it is just black and white footage cut together. There's some really interesting shots with like splicing the negatives together.
Is that what makes it hard to watch, or?
It's hard to watch because it's long and it's black and white, and it's a silent film.
Oh. Okay.
So there have been a couple of people who have tried to record music for it. So there are copies out there that have music, but it's more recently recorded. I think there's sort of orchestral versions, but maybe there's also piano versions, because silent film, they were like playing piano in the auditorium. Anyway, so it's cool to watch if you're interested in film, because there are times when, if you know about film, how it works, like actual film, not digital video, it's frames of film going by so quickly that our brain doesn't really process the difference between the images and strings them all together, which creates the movement. So there are times when you can sort of like tell it's slowing down, so you can see the black bars go by between the frames.
Cool.
And I think a lot of that is intentional, like they're experimenting with what film is. So lots of experimental shots, but also it stands as a document as to what it was like to live in Russia in 1929. So it's cool. There's like early cars and
Neat.
movie cameras on cars and trains and stuff like that. So the Global Remake is an online website that invites global citizens of the world, people everywhere, to select scenes from Man with a Movie Camera and record their own versions or animate their own versions and upload them to the site. And there's software that has been created that pairs the scenes side by side. So you can watch the Man with the Movie Camera on one side and someone's, like, a new version of the film every single time someone plays it that pulls different clips each time. So
That's
you're
really
watching
cool.
a new version every single time. So
Do you know if they've had a lot of submissions?
there's a lot of submissions, but there are definitely still scenes that haven't been done. And there are even really short ones, like there are like 3-second scenes that
Cool.
haven't been done.
We should do one.
We should do one. I have actually done one. I took a film studies course and was required to do one. So I did an animation that was in the film. It's like an aerial view of a square, and there's different pathways through it, and there's buses and cars and people walking and stuff. But I was sort of thinking about how it was an industrial time, and I took that scene and I started moving all the elements around, like the patches of garden and the sidewalks and the buses and things, and I started moving them around as though they were like elements of a machine, like cogs moving and
Cool.
stuff like that. So I have done it before, but I definitely want to do more because it's so cool. And it's really interesting to see some people's are like super modern, colorful things. Like there's shots of taxi cabs in New York, the yellow going by next to this black and white 1920s film. So
That's really neat.
it's a really cool project. I'll put a link to it.
How long is that like open for?
It's been open for a while, and I think it just keeps going. Like I don't think there is
until
an end
they've
date.
got everything that they want, I guess.
I don't think there is an
It's an
end date.
ongoing
I think
thing.
it's just ongoing, and the idea is that every time someone wants to watch this film, they'll see new clips. It's never the same movie whenever people play it. So
That's crazy. Seriously, watching like a one-of-a-kind thing.
yeah, it's so cool. So maybe some of you will participate. Definitely send us links and let us know, maybe on Facebook or through our Gmail, if you're participating, because we'd love to see that. And we'll let you know if we do one.
Yeah, we'll put it into our podcast.
Yeah.
That's really neat. If you want a video camera or just a normal camera or an iPhone, even
Anything.
definitely do that.
Mm-hmm.
So what was the name of that again?
It is Man with the Movie Camera, the Global Remake. And I will put a link at the bottom because it's not, the website isn't just that. It's got a really, it's www.dziga.perrybard.net.
Yeah, no one's ever
So
going to
that'll
remember
be
that.
down there. You're not going to remember. I'll stick it somewhere for you to click.
Do you know like the company who is putting that on or together?
It's actually an artist project. I think Perry Bard is the artist that's
Okay.
working on it, and if you scroll down to the bottom of the first page, it has a whole bunch of sponsors who have donated to it. So I think like even Google's on it. There's funding from the British government. I think there's funding from the Canadian government. Maybe even New Zealand. I can't remember, but there's a bunch of people like arts societies and companies funding it because it's a cool project. Who wouldn't want to get in on that, you know? Slap your name on something awesome.
That's neat. And that kind of reminds me of Joseph Gordon-Levitt has his own company called HitRecord, and they do a lot of, they reach out to a lot of artists. I follow him on Tumblr, and they're always doing like calls for things like that, and basically every project is a collaboration between tons of people. So
Cool.
same kind of idea, really neat. If you're into filming and doing projects with other people. Those are 2 things now that you can check out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so was that all for that?
I think that's all I've got today.
Just briefly rundown of some local things. This weekend coming up is the Wishago Music Festival. I'm actually going to be singing with my sister's band.
Oh, yeah?
So in our next episode, I'll do a run through of how all that went. And Starry Night's coming up.
Yeah.
That is the August 23rd.
Yes, August 23rd. And I've got some ideas about how we're going to cover that potentially for the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah,
I guess that's all we have for today.
Thanks for watching episode 3 of the Arts District podcast.
Thank you.
Bye.